Not you breathing into the mic. You wanna you wanna
Beep boop. Boop beep boop.
wait. Is there supposed to be music? Oh no, you
No.
took it out. So this is live right now.
Are we live right now?
I think can they hear us
Oh.
right now?
Do the countdown quick. 20, 15, 10,
I
7.
promise I that tripped me out. I thought this was the outro.
Initiating countdown. Boop 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 beep.
No,
Boop,
don't
boop.
do that again.
No, we're not. We're not. They can't hear us.
They can't? Okay.
No, they can't.
They can?
No, they can't.
Oh,
Stop.
okay.
Yeah.
No,
For sure.
how do you feel about
What's going on, everybody? Welcome to a special edition of the House of Nerd Show. And to answer Cookie's question, it's Saturday, baby. It's Saturday. I think this is probably maybe the only time we've ever gone live on a Saturday. Feels weird.
the Kirby's showcase was on this Saturday.
The Kirby's? Oh, it was on a Saturday too, eh?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, we don't go often live other than the Sunday mornings, but we got a special guest with us joining us in just a second. We had to do it. So and Cookie is confirming that they could hear us. No, I knew. I tried to set you up.
I figured. That's why I tried to set you back up.
I tried to set you up. I said, I want the audience to hear how Al talks to me when we're not live.
Always pleasant, always kind.
Ma'am, I wish. I just cry silently on the inside.
You cry salad.
Eh?
You said you cry salad leaves.
Cry silently.
Silently.
I'm all kooky right now, folks. I apologize. It's been a weird weekend. Figured right. Shout out. Cheers, my man. Cheers, my man. Thank you for joining us. We got Aaron Reese in the house, or Reese Aaron in the house. What's going on? Thank you for joining us. Appreciate it. Yeah, it's a Saturday. It's the World Cup. Things seem crazy, hectic. Is it just me?
Well, soccer doesn't exist in my world,
That's
so
football,
it's
man.
just a Saturday.
Football
Doesn't exist in my immediate world, so it's like,
No?
oh, are you guys talking about FIFA 2K or something?
FIFA 2K. Stop it.
Are you guys playing video games today? I don't know.
There's a big game going on right now. Big game going on. I'm surprised Cookie's not. She's probably double streaming. Eh? Argentina, Germany. I believe. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I believe. Oh no, so excuse me, Mexico and Argentina. I think. I don't know.
For sure.
I don't watch the sports. I don't watch
Yeah.
the sports. I lied. I'm a faker. I don't watch football.
We know you.
How you doing today, Al?
Oh, I'm a little under the weather, but
Yeah?
I'm present.
Again?
Yeah, I got 3 kids, so that's like 3 times sick every time one of them
Oh
gets
my
sick.
God, Al, you're always sick. Take a little vitamin C, get some vitamin D in you. I'm concerned about you. I am. I really am, my friend.
It's just having little kids. You
Man.
remember, you have like 6 or 7 of them, a gaggle.
Squadron. Shout out to City Boy. Yo, what's going on, baby? Thank you so much for joining us. Appreciate everybody coming through. We know it's not the usual time. Yeah, everybody's like, what's going on here, man? Saturday. You guys don't
Learned something new about Phil this weekend. He likes centaurs.
feel like centaurs?
He's a big centaur fan.
What is that? What is centaur?
A centaur, like a half human, half horse.
Okay.
Yeah, but you pick what side is half. Yeah.
I feel like we should be asking.
Choose your own adventure.
Yeah. Folks, we've got the pleasure, we've got the honor of having the one, the only comic book letter award-winning Mr. Hassan Otsmane-Elhaou in the house. Baby, what's going on, Hassan? How you doing?
I'm good. That was a dynamite introduction for my name. You nailed it.
Did I? I was.
You did.
Man,
You did a cracking job.
I said it. Hassan just told us right before we went on live the proper pronunciation. So I said, if I mess this up, man, I'm not gonna be able to live it down.
It was great. It was perfect.
Thank you very much, sir. And thank
It was
you
like
so
getting
much
told
for-
off at home.
Because what happened? What would have happened if I mispronounced that? As soon as we
Oh,
went off
I
the
would've-
air,
no, I-
she would have thrown me in.
Oh, I would have. Yeah.
I would have just agreed to anything you'd called me.
Oh, man.
Sergio still
that's the
says
British
my name
half of
wrong.
me. I would have been like, it's Otsmane. That's 100% it.
Oh man, thank you so much, Hassan, for joining us. We had you on way back when now, almost a year ago now, for the nerdies, folks. If you recall, Hassan, as voted by you guys, the community, the 2021 letter of the year, and we've been meaning to get you on since then. So very, very excited to have you on.
Yeah, I'm excited to be here. I was a little bit stressed when you started talking about the World Cup because I don't watch it. I only watch. I'm only interested in like soccer or football when Algeria are playing. Otherwise, I don't care. So they're not in this because they played terribly in the Africa Cup of Nations. So
Man.
I'm not. I haven't watched a single minute of the World Cup, unfortunately. I was so worried when you said you don't really watch sport. I was so relieved because I was so worried I was gonna have to pretend to know what was happening.
Oh no, he was serious. He was really hoping. He messaged earlier. He was like, hopefully we could have a solid 45-minute play-by-play. What's it called? A triple hat or something when you get 3 in a row. In soccer, what's it called?
Oh, it's a hat trick.
There we go. A triple hat.
Triple hat then. I know it's not that.
Okay.
I like sports, but for whatever reason, soccer's like one of the things I don't really watch unless it's Algeria.
Okay.
We could talk baseball. We can talk.
Are you a baseball fan?
Yeah, we can talk.
Okay.
I'm just getting into basketball. We could vaguely talk about basketball.
Okay.
But soccer, unless you want to talk about the horrendous defeat of Algeria last year, then I can't add much to it.
So you're talking about the Africa Nations Cup?
Yeah, it was rough.
Yeah,
it was rough. We won it as well. Like pre-pandemic, we looked incredible, and then last year it was just it was awful. It was like a team we'd never played with each other before.
Yeah,
awful.
And Algeria doesn't happen to be in. They're not. You guys aren't in the World Cup this year.
Yeah, because we did so bad in the Africa Cup of Nations. It's like the qualifier for it.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, we don't have to dwell on it. It's a sore topic.
Hell, get off the topic. He's trying to. My goodness, ma'am. Hassan, I got a question. The first question for you, definitely the most important question.
Mm-hmm.
I think probably the question on everyone's mind, and I'm gonna ask you to give it to us straight.
Okay.
Give it to us raw, Hassan, please. Here we go. Favorite letter. Favorite letter.
I do you know what? In the context of comic books, I really like an S or a G. An S or a G is in kind of comic book fonts, I feel like the S and the G a lot of the time, and maybe the O's as well, have like the heart and soul of the font. And there's like some G's that are really, really nice. Comic Crafts Ladron has a really fun G, like a really nice G. And I'm a big fan of like the Richard Starkins font with the S, which has it has like the little curved kind of top, which Collect 'em All, Bandbox Collect 'em All also has this little curved top on the top of the S, and that's really nice. A G and an S are like my two go-tos, but also it's also fun to see a big circular O compared to some maybe like slightly thinner, taller O's. Heavy Metal, Bandbox Heavy Metal has a really nice O in it. If you wanted a serious answer to the question.
I love it, and I love the answer and I'm not gonna give away, but my initials happen to be S and G. So I said
two best letters.
Sir, you were a man clearly of taste.
And your middle name begins with an O, so we've covered the.
Apparently, I don't know. Can't give it all away for free. Second question I got for you, Hassan. And feel free to be honest with this one. Myself, we want to know: are you a cyborg of some sorts? Now, I ask because it seems that your name is on just about every other book that comes out these days. You're you're one of the premier comic book letters in the game. You editor of the award-winning Eisner Award-winning panel by panel digital magazine, and then you've got like this massive, very cool YouTube channel, Strip Panel Naked. So you seem to be doing it all. So what I'm getting at is, are you a machine of some sort? How do you do
director,
it?
huh?
I don't have kids.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Is probably the answer to the question. Yeah, I don't. I mean, there is a slight kind of disconnect sometimes with comics, because like some stuff will come out and like I'm working on it like 30 days before people get it in their hands in the shops, right? And then there's some stuff that comes out and like, so like for example, I did an Image book that came out this year called Rogues Gallery, and that came out I think the first issue came out in June or July, and I finished and it's 4 issues long, and I finished lettering the 4th issue of that like last September or something like that. So it's like,
wow,
that looked like I was really busy.
Okay.
But I did that a year ago. And so like there's kind of like there's little things where some books you're doing like like the DC stuff that I work on is like we're handing stuff in as it goes to print. But then there's other things where we're probably like way ahead. Like we are a couple of months ahead or a couple of issues ahead or whatever. So it kind of it's slightly misleading sometimes. So there's also it's also kind of weird because you work like we did Rose Gallery and I was working on that last year, and it's weird that like it's sort of long in the memory by the time it comes out. Like we're talking about in like doing promo, we were doing promo for it, and the trade comes out in next month I think, and it's like it's weird to talk about that book now because it's kind of like I don't have a very good memory at the best of times, but it's kind of like gone from the kind of current crop of stuff that I'm working on. It's like 18 months ago, 12 months, sorry, not 18 months, 12 months ago. So it's weird. It's weird to like talk about that book again and remember all the like the kind of fun stuff that we did in that book because of how long ago it was. And also, as I say, there's like stuff I'm doing now that I guess I probably can't talk about, but that hasn't been announced. And it's like, you won't see that for like 12 to 18 months.
Wow.
Some of that stuff. So it's weird. Working on comics is really strange in that way, where some of it's so immediate, like it's you'll get it next week, and then some of it it's like 2 years I'll remember we worked on this book and I'll talk about it and we'll promote it when it comes out. It's very strange.
Wow. So quite the range there. Like you said, some of the stuff you hand in your work and then just as it's going to print, and then others you completed the work a year and a half.
Yeah, it's weird. It's really strange. It's like it's harder to remember. It's harder to kind of like think back to the stuff, because at any month I'm working on like 300, 400 pages of comics. So it's hard to remember like
that's insane.
What would be like 4,500 pages ago, I guess, to think back to some of those books. But what's fun, it's really fun like rediscovering it. Like, oh, this thing's coming out. I'm gonna have to flick through and kind of see that stuff. That's really good fun. And even some some of the Image stuff I work on is like, maybe 3 months ago we did this book, and so it's fun to see that again. Like when the comps arrive and you get to flick through it, and you're like, oh, it's okay. I did an okay job. I did a good job on this one.
For sure. Speaking of doing a good job, one of my favorite covers that's come out this year. Love this one right here. So this, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, this is your first comic book cover. Is that correct?
Yeah, I did. I did one balloon on I think it was Death to the Army of Darkness issue 1. I added a balloon to a cover. I think that's the only other time. It was just like I can't remember what the cover was. It was or maybe it was like all these different versions of Ash from Evil Dead. And I put one shouting balloon from someone being like or whatever. I can't remember what it was. It was a few years ago. But yeah, this was where I'm credited as doing a cover, which was really, really good fun. Sean and Hayden just came to me and were like, we think you could do something with it. Like, we think it'd be really fun, because they felt like I was a kind of a integral, I was a big part of that book. I'm really proud of the work on it, and And they were like, okay, so we just think you could do like a cool lettering cover. And so I just had literally a blank page and I could just do whatever. And so I came up with this story because there's like a little reference to the Johnny Cash song, A Boy Named Sue. So we did it's kind of a play on that story, hopefully enough that no one sues me. And then it kind of goes through, and I don't know. It was just a chance to be as playful and expressive as possible, and do something that not a lot of people really get the chance to do. I think it was really, really good fun. I'm really glad that that it exists. It's cool to see it, and that people bought it. That's also really, really good fun. It's just sick, man. It was awesome. It was just a fun opportunity to do something that you just don't really ever get a chance to do.
And this was one of my favorite panels from I think issue 2 with the bubble and the reflection of the knife. I thought that was so cool when I read it the first time. Like, I think on the episode we did after this issue came out, that's like the only thing I talked about. I'm like, pause the story for a minute. That's so cool.
It's like, you know, there's a fine line between just stupid and and something that works. And I don't know. Sometimes where some of my stuff lands on that scale, but I was happy with it. It's kind of like, you know, does it draw attention to itself? Yes, I guess, but intentionally, I suppose. But it's a fun thing in comics, right? I think, like, you know, that wouldn't. Do people in comic book worlds see the balloons? Do they make? Is there noise in comics? I don't think there is noise in the comic book worlds. I think they just are constantly like having to bat these like balloons out of their way when they're walking down the street, and every time, you know, like they chop a vegetable when they're cooking, and a big chop comes, and they have to like brush it away because they need to clear space on the chopping board. I think that's the world that they live in, and I think it's, you know, impossible for you to prove otherwise.
I love it, man. And then we had Brubaker's Muse. He said it was one of his favorite covers of 2022. I mean, it really is, like you said. It's so fun, you know, just creative. You know, on the shelves at any comic book shop, you know, it just pops, man. Immediately drawn to it.
Yeah, that's what I would hope, is that if you saw it, you'd at least just pick it up to read it.
Yeah.
Like, you know, even if it didn't sell you on the book or whatever, like I think you'd at least pick it up and be like, what is this? And kind of read through and read the story and enjoy the story. And I think it's like one of those things. It's like, you know, I think sometimes lettering can sometimes be seen as like a technical process, rather than like a creative process or whatever. And I think that's something that, like, I'm not like I'm saying this exclusively about my work, but like that's something that I would try and move against, is that there is a kind of a technical element to it, but also it's like, you know, if your job is to be additive, I think, and sometimes you hear the old expression about like lettering should be invisible or whatever, and there is an element to that which I think is true, but the idea that like you're being brought on to not to be so invisible as to not add anything to the page, essentially, like, I always think with that idea that lettering should be invisible, that what you're really saying is like, don't detract, but that's as far as we get with it, rather than take that further to be like, well, let's be additive. You can be additive without detracting, and I think sometimes we don't get to the additive stage. We maybe think too much of lettering as just being, just don't do anything that kind of like causes a disturbance. But I think everything that is added to the comic beyond the script level is essentially a disturbance. Like every drawing that you're doing is something that someone has to read and engage with and notice. Every color that's applied to the page is going to be noticed either subconsciously or consciously. So it's weird. I always think it's weird to talk about comics as being like, let's just stop getting people to see things. Like, let's not have anything that draws any attention to itself, because the very composition of a panel is designed to draw attention to something. That's the whole point. That's the whole way comics work. That wasn't a question that you asked me, but,
no, but I love it.
That's like my thing with, and that's kind of like what the cover was me just being, is like, how loud and brash and annoying can I make lettering? But to tell a story, to do it without needing the images. So
your chance to kind of really let loose then.
No one could tell me not to do anything on that cover. So I mean, it was literally a blank canvas. Like, it was just a white sheet the size of a digital image.
It's incredible.
And just get the chance to kind of do anything and everything on it. Yeah, I really liked it.
And we got another comment regarding the cover. Joe loves comics. Excuse me. I just wanted to say that Above Snake's lettering cover was incredible, and I always love your work, Hassan. Yes,
that's very kind. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Joe, for popping by. Hassan, for those who might not be familiar with you, can you let us know, a little bit about what's your comic book origin story? Who are you? What do you do? All that good stuff, my man.
It's a big existential question.
Yes.
Who are you? I remember having to do a talk once, like years and years ago, not related to comic books, and it was like a lecturer at a university I used to work at, and a lecturer gave me like a rundown of what I should do, and she said like the first thing is just who are you? And I was like, that's a big. I had to go outside and take a walk and just really think about things for a little bit. That was a real stressful. I remember just looking in the mirror, repeating my own name for 30 minutes, just trying to figure something out. I letter comic books. I've been doing it full time for about 5 years, and I also make a magazine called Panel by Panel with loads of brilliant writers, and we sort of break down comics and analyze comics craft and stuff like that. And I did a YouTube series, but I guess did that before anything else, called Strip Pile Naked, breaking down comic book storytelling. For me, like the first thing I remember reading for comics was like, in England we've got like the Beano and Dandy. I don't know that there's necessarily like an American equivalent of those things. But they're kind of like kids comics, like Dennis the Menace, like the British Dennis the Menace, not like the American Dennis the Menace for some weird reason. So it's stuff like Dennis the Menace and things like that, like little gag strips and fun things like that. Like every kid reads those in the UK, basically. And then when I got a little bit older, my dad is Algerian and grew up with like French stuff. And so he got like me a bunch of French comics like Lucky Luke, Asterix, that sort of thing. And then we'd go on holiday to France, and France is incredible because you'll go into a supermarket and there'll be like the first thing you'll see in the supermarket is at the time was a thing called Titieuf, which was like this kind of slightly vulgar sort of aimed at teenagers, I guess, like high school age teenagers, and it was like about a high school boy, and there was like sex gags in it and stuff like that. That kind of like made sense in France, I guess, but like to anyone else was maybe a bit too much.
Okay.
And you go into a supermarket and there'd be this huge like Titieuf cutout. There'd be it's like the first thing you see, and there'd be these racks and racks and racks of comic books, and it's incredible. And so I would go in and I would grab whatever my dad would buy for me, and then he saw what was in a collection of Titieuf, and we never bought a second one. But that's how I find comics, is reading these French books, and just kind of falling in love with like fun comics. And then my friend, when I was at school, a friend gave me a copy of they used to do these like old black and white reprints of like the early Marvel stuff. I think they're called like Essentials or something, and it'd be like a phone book of really cheap black and white reprints of like the first 30 issues of Spider-Man. And I'd never read anything like that before, and I read it and I was like, this is incredible. This has like changed my life. And then since then, like I found a local comic shop, and I would go and give him I used to work in a burger van, and I would give him my burger van money, and I would get loads of comic books.
That's dope.
And that was it. And I kind of gave up on them for a while, and then I think I was on holiday and I was just looking for something to read, and I found a copy of Moon Knight, the Declan Shalvey Moon Knight, and I read that and I was like, wow, this is incredible, it's so cool, and that just got me straight back into it again. I think that's the whole route.
So that wasn't too long ago then?
That was recent. Yeah.
Wow.
I think it's I want to say 2014, 2015-ish maybe is when I kind of like, I was still reading comics, but I wasn't like, I was buying comics from like the bookshop and just grabbing whatever looked like indie stuff that looked interesting, and the literary comics, blah, blah, blah. But I didn't go back into a comic book shop after being about 21, 22 until I was later in my 20s. And not to age myself. And then and then that's when that's kind of got me back into the comic shop and grabbing monthlies and stuff like that.
It's pretty cool.
So,
just from all your videos, like on your Strip Panel Naked, I mean, to the work you do as a letter and panel by panel, all that stuff, man, it really, like, your knowledge and how you go in depth on everything. It just, for me, honestly, it makes me, I feel like I'm stupid. I need to be a smarter reader, man. Like it's tremendous, really. And I encourage everybody to check out, again, whether it's the Panel by Panel magazine or Strip Panel Naked. Like, yeah, the knowledge is just it's incredible.
I don't. It's like, it's just, for me, it's like, it's not. I think that's the wrong way to take it.
Yeah.
It's not. It's just about, like, you know, because I did like a film degree.
Yeah.
And that was mind blowing to me, because I remember, you know, you'd sit in a lecture and you'd watch like a bit of film, and then you'd all just sit around and be like, what is this doing, and how is it doing it? And I was like, this is just never things I'd ever thought about before. It's like never questions I'd ever asked. I was like, I just would go watch a film and it would do something to me, and I would leave and I'd be like, that's interesting. And I never really kind of stopped to be like, how are these things doing the things that they're doing? And ever since that happened, like, that's always been the thing that fascinated me about, like, any art form, really. Like, I'm a big Penn and Teller fan, because the thing with Penn and Teller that's fascinating is, like, the Penn and Teller do this the cups and balls trick, which is like the classic magic trick of you putting a ball under a cup, and then you lift the cup and there's like two balls in there, and or you pick the cup up and the ball's gone, but now it's under another cup or whatever. And they do that, and the effect of it is really fascinating. And then their version is they then do it again, but they use see-through cups, so you can see them doing the sleight of hand. It never takes away the impression. Like, it's incredible. It's even more impressive when you see what they're actually doing, which is this unbelievable sleight of hand. Like, that's more, to me, that ends up being more impressive. And so, like, that part of making things has always been really, really fascinating. Is like, I love the effect of it, but I also love how you're doing that. It's so interesting. And like, that's kind of what Strip Panel Naked was trying to figure out. Like, when I read this book and my mind gets blown, or I feel emotion, or I cry, or whatever, it's like, what are you doing that's making me do that? And I love that. It's fascinating. Strip Panel Naked is coming back. I've got like 8 episodes written that are going to be recorded and edited very soon. So there is more coming. It's not finished. Just to answer this wonderful question.
Awesome. Yeah, and we do have for those folks who are watching live or on the replay, in the description of the video, we got a link to Strip Panel Naked, as well as the Panel by Panel magazine. I can highly recommend, and they really are fun, man. At the end of the day, it's just fun to watch that stuff. You can see, you know, the passion and the love that you have for this medium is there, man. And I think that's, you know, I always love watching content. I think, unfortunately, a lot of times, especially with YouTube, people like to dwell on the negative to get those clicks, or the headlines, clickbait, and it's nice to see content where it is really just, we love this medium, we're enjoying it. This is the best of comics, So
yeah.
I mean,
I think the way that I talk about comics in those videos is never going to be. It's never going to drive clicks. So it's not like, I think the things that I talk about it, like, and also I always find it, I always laugh when I like put like the titles together, and it's always, I'm like, no one's ever going to click this when they see this thumbnail on this title. No one's ever going to be like, oh yeah, I want to watch 5 minutes of why the middle panel of a 9-panel grid is useful. And I can never get the click. I need to be like, I need to have much more clickbaity titles, I think. But
oh man,
yeah, it's just like, I just like talking about it, and it's easier to turn that into a video than it is like talk to my partner who doesn't care about comics about it. So that's like my outlet. It's just me just getting excited about things and then throwing it on the internet instead.
It's amazing. I love it.
Panel by panel for me, especially because not to drop my own credentials, but I have one of my degrees is in screenwriting, and I just love like the process of the conversion process and revisions and the drafts and stuff. And so panel by panel, it feeds that nosy side of me. I love seeing like the breakdowns, especially talking directly with that person. It's not opinions, like, no, this is exactly what we were trying to do. So I think that's like one of my favorite things to check out. And also, you happen to usually focus on books I like, so so it's cool.
Yeah, I think like that's again like going back to like the Penn and Teller thing. It's just like seeing how the thing is done is so cool, and like getting someone to talk about like what they were, what we were trying to do. And you can decide if people were effective in it with that or not. But like just hearing like, okay, look, this is what we wanted to do, and the kind of like this is the process that we went through to get that. If you're interested in making comics, I think that's always going to be useful. But also, even if you're just interested in like how comics work, like you're just a fan of the medium, even if you're like, I don't ever want to make a comic, but I love comics. I think there's loads of fun stuff in Panel by Panel because it's just great to hear people kind of really specifically talk about like like we always try and get them to talk very specifically about like processes and stages, and learning like what did you learn on this process, like how is this different. There's a really fun thing like Elsa who drew Love Everlasting. We had the Love Everlasting issue a few months ago, and she talked about how she had drawn digitally for years now because it's quicker for a process, and she really wanted to get back to drawing analog. But she was so used to the tools that it was difficult for her to there you go. It was difficult for her to do that, and so she talked about this interesting process of like having to draw each panel individually, away from the page, like on a sheet of paper, like outside of the page design, and then figure out how to manipulate that together as a whole unit because she was so used to like the digital tools of Photoshop and kind of scaling things and moving things, and so it's just stuff like that. Like I don't know where else you're going to hear about that. Like that just was just so fascinating to read that sort of thing and hear about someone being like, this was a struggle I had, like making this book. Like this was a thing I learned how to do differently and kind of had to reapproach my process and stuff. So that's like what we do. So every interview is like 20 odd pages long, and we really get into it and try and incorporate as much of the process as possible from the colorist and the letterer and everything like that.
And what font is this? Because I like want everything written in my life. This font, like when I read this, like also like pink is like my favorite color. Very on brand, but whatever. But the font, I was like, I can't stop. I love this font so much.
I think pink is like the most recurring color of the magazine because every magazine issue is like a different color, but like that pink is like my favorite color, so pink comes back. And like a pink, like every other issue ends up being pink just because I'm like it's just nice to look at. So the font I honestly I will find out for you and I'll let you know because it will be saved somewhere, but I cannot remember.
Just
it's
everything.
Nice though.
Just writing to my kids' school, like just everything.
I'm a huge fan of that the R going over the E on the word differently. I really like that.
And how the E goes into the N.
Yeah.
E is my favorite letter. You're like, nobody asked you.
E. Why E, L? I'm curious.
𝐬𝐭𝐚𝐲, my name.
Oh, okay.
Oh, yeah.
Is your name? Okay.
Yeah, my name is... can you pronounce it yet?
L. I call you L.
Yeah.
Stop. Don't putting me on the spot. I got Hassan's name right.
Yeah, okay. Just one a day.
Yeah. I'm trying to end the show on a high note. Not that we're wrapping this one up. You've got. So we mentioned earlier, you seem to be on just about every other book that comes out this year. I think you got Chicken Devils, Bloodstained Teeth, Brother of All Men, Crashing, Above Snakes, Blue Flame. Some of my older favorites like Home, and then you've got like DC stuff as well. Batman Rogues, sort of is Azrael, World of Krypton. So you do a lot of. Go ahead, sorry.
I said, is this it? No, this is Crashing.
This is Crashing, yeah.
I did want to ask real fast. It's not to cut you off, Sergio, but to cut you off.
Well, I want to ask my question then.
Were these so local heroes? If you guys haven't read Razor Blades, there's this one story in the first issue or in the compendium or whatever it is, omnibus, in the first one, local heroes, which I feel it should be mandatory reading. It's that story out of everything in the book messed me up the most because it was so simple, but it was like the story was so effective. So when you do the lettering,
I can tell what you're about to ask me already. I think.
Are you responsible for the bubbles, like for like the newspaper cutout?
Oh yeah.
So what was I gonna ask you?
Were you going to ask me about the news logo?
You didn't do it?
No, I did do it, yeah. Yeah.
No, I wasn't, but now I'm curious.
Oh,
Like...
I was going to tell you something. I was going to tell you a hidden secret that I don't think anyone's spotted. But sorry, you carry on.
Oh, no. Oh, no, now I'm like looking at it like, what am I?
No, it's not. It's nothing in this image. I mean, it is, but it isn't.
It is, but
no, please. What's the hidden secret? We want to know. Give us the tea.
No, I want to hear the question first.
Okay.
Oh no, my thing was just saying, like, I felt like all of the pieces of just how effective it was in storytelling, with the news inserts and just like the flow of it is like, even like. We read a lot of your work, a lot of your books and stuff, but for this to have been so short, it was like so rich because of that. Like, so it's like one of my favorite shorts, like in any anthology. But now go ahead.
Well, what I'll say, just to follow on from that, is that I did a whole bunch of the shorts in Razor Blades.
Oh yeah, I loved all of them, and they all feel so. And for it all to be, that's why it like blows my mind, because it's all in one collection, right? But like everything is so like unique and to itself, so it doesn't feel like, oh, we just had this one guy in the workshop like nonstop, just pumping stuff out.
Yeah, that was the fun thing. Like that was, and that's what I love so much about working on that, was that it was just every month or whatever it was at the time, I would get 4 or 5 or whatever stories, and because they were all apart from like one or two that were kind of like ongoing. There was the one with Jason Liu and Alex Packnadell, Cinderside, that was like a truth that went through all of them. But basically, they were all just like, the remit I had from Steve Fox and James was just do whatever, like just make sure each one feels like it should feel, for the book. And so I got to do like I just got to try so many different things out and experiment, and it's one thing you don't really get to do very often. Because once you kind of settle for a style on a book and you're doing 100 pages of that book or whatever, there are variations of that in there, but like you're kind of doing the thing that you've established early. Whereas this was like every story was like you're responding to a new piece of artwork, you're doing something completely different, you're trying different things out, seeing what works. It was one of the most fun things I've worked on, just purely from that. Like it was just an opportunity to just do something different. Like this one with Zach and Jenna, that's like wildly different than the Sweeney Todd story with Lucy and Dan, or the one you just shown with Steve and Michael. Like just everything, hopefully everything was a little bit different,
especially for this one, because like all the bubbles are very distinct, like based on voice, which is, I love when people do that instead of just a whole bunch of like round rectangular boxes. And also it like lends to like the immediacy of like her descent. And I think you do that. Sergio pointed out in Crashing too. Like the more on she is, the more buzzier the panels are.
Yeah. Well, that's, I mean, I think Jenna's work is incredible. Huge Jenna fan. And we'd done a book. We'd done a pitch for a book, in the same like universe, not real, like the Jenna Lonnie cinematic universe, and we'd done another book that and so we were kind of trying to establish a style that worked with everything. And this kind of like, it was kind of based on another story we'd done in that same world, where everything just slowly, like people's mental states kind of deteriorated. So it's again, it's like it's fun. It's fun. It's fun to kind of do something like that.
And her Thoughtscape cover, like I bought it just off of, I was like, I don't know what this is, buying it.
I mean, we should have like regular Jenna horror comics coming out on the shelves if there's any justice in the world. I think she's great. But the other thing, which hopefully we'll see the light of day at some point, is also very, very, very good and very horrific. The one thing so the little KRTS news thing that you had up, I made that for that Razor Blade story, and I have used that in multiple different books. I won't say which. People can find it if they want to in some comics that I've lettered. I think it appears in at least two more comics. When I just really thought it was really funny that like they all exist in the same world. I'm just secretly making a bunch of books the same, all set in the same Hassan
Sergio, if you don't
Otsmane-Elhaou
read
cinematic universe.
anything else today,
Uh-huh.
in Razor Blades, you have to read this story. Like they should teach this story in school. Like it's so.
I'm gonna check it out. You guys send me the link. Send me the
It's
link.
good. It's good. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's good. And you see if you can spot local KRTS news in other books. There's little things.
I will look for it now. I promise you, I'm gonna scour all your books.
There's sometimes there's little gags sometimes that I put in, and I don't know what this says about me. There's little gags that I put into books sometimes that are really just for me. There's a gag in of a name of just a kind of throwaway name of a news reporter in a different story that also relates to another throwaway news reporter name that I added in the background of something else. So it's just stuff, I just find little things like that to be kind of amusing for myself. Not because it doesn't change the reading experience to anyone.
Yeah.
But to me it just makes me smile when
See, Sergio, stuff is funny because I put hidden Sergios in some of the panels sometimes, and to me it's like I cry, like it's hilarious. But him, he's like, you got to stop bullying me.
It's like I mean, I think it's just fun. Like to me, it's just amusing because it's kind of just like a fun thing that you get to do as a letter. Like no one will ever notice. But also, you know, if anyone ever spots it, it'll be great. Like that's I sort of always think it literally will not change anyone's reading experience. But if anyone ever spots it, then they can win a no prize from me.
I love little things like that though. Like and now I just because my wheels are really turning. I'm trying to wonder which book potentially. And I know there was a couple news segments in one of the issues of Crashing actually. So I'm gonna have to go back and Hassan's he's playing Sly. Okay.
I genuinely now the thing is I genuinely can't remember. But like I mean it's a good a shot as any, so it could be.
Okay.
Let me know if you find it. If you
absolutely.
It.
And we're gonna
I've lied and I've never used it again, and you're just gonna be reading
3 months from now. I'm gonna be like, oh, I still haven't found it.
It'll be like the Charlie Day GIF, like all the things on the wall with this red string connecting all the different pages. Yeah.
That's great. No, I did want to play a little clip here for you, Hassan, and for the folks at home watching. I won't even really give any context. Let's just play this one here. Hey, sir, for you. That's all of you. 2021 Nerdy Letter of the Year.
This is really cool. It's I like it's really very glitz and glam. I like it a lot. I've never seen anyone interested in comics this dressed up.
Like,
I feel really bad. I feel so underdressed.
Oh man!
Really, this is yeah. I should have dressed up next time. If I'm lucky enough, next time I'll come full.
Oh, I mean, based on your track record, it's likely.
I'll come if lucky enough, even as a guest, I'll come full myself in the foot by promising this now. But I'll
there you have it.
I'll come 3-piece suit.
Really sorry. I'm glad that I don't have the mustache anymore.
No.
I mean, that's if it was a trade-off between the mustache and the suit, or no mustache and just hoodie. I have made the correct decision.
Actually, now that you point it,
I forgot about that mustache.
Yeah?
So thank you for that.
I love the stash. You got a mean stash, man. I really do. I was like,
this is terrible. Terrible. I forgot that was the depths of the 2021. I think that was the
So a little crush that you didn't come through with the 3-piece suit, but
So I'm very sorry.
That's okay. That's
okay. I feel like I've been lulled into a trap here.
No. Let's not. There was also another part of that clip, Sergio, where you said if he was on again, you would wear your glasses and take off the hat because twins.
Did I say that?
Yeah.
Do you have a clip of that? Because I don't really
it might be a clip I made, mentally, but yeah.
I mean,
well, listen, next time we got
put on the glasses. There you go.
Oh wow!
Hold on, side by side here.
Wow, that is
crazy.
That is hilarious. We might be related. Do you have any Algerian family?
I don't know, Hassan. You're one good-looking cat. It's like looking in a mirror. Uncanny. I love it. I said I said, not only is Hassan a great, comic book letter, a great creator, but I said, yeah, that's a good looking dude right there.
I think it's the comic book. It's the man comic book outfit is bald head and facial hair and glasses. None of us actually look like this. It's just a mask that we get given when we sign up to be interested in comic books. We've all got great full heads of hair.
Now, I gotta ask you, what do you use, bud?
I use a Gillette. If they're listening, I'll happily take free razor blades. I use a Gillette, like a face razor, and just go to town.
Oh yeah,
yeah. It's like a callus, just pure callus up here. It's just no feeling whatsoever. Yeah, I just use a Gillette, like a face razor.
Yeah.
Scrape and scrape and scrape.
I used to do that for years. I used to just bick it, with the razor. But my scalp's a little sensitive, so I got a nice, I don't know what do you call it, like a clippers, but it gets like really down to the.
I don't feel like the clippers ever get. I want like smooth.
Yeah.
Smooth. Yeah, I want the smoothest. But I once, this is a weird story, but I once, my partner, does social media management, and she was at the time doing social media management for a fairly known, not to me, but like to other people, I guess, fairly known. Like a men's, what do you call them? Men's toiletries company.
Sure.
That did like aftershave and shaving foam and all this kind of stuff. And so there was they do like a big barbers conference in this place in England. And so she had to go to this. She was doing this thing, running their social media over this weekend, and they needed a model, and the model had dropped out, and they needed someone to go and sit and get shaved, like a clean shave. But it's absolutely incredibly insane Dutch hairdresser that people was sort of really famous. Like people were coming up to him at the show and being like, "I'm a huge fan of your work." And I was like, "This is just a world I've never been part of." So if when you're the partner of someone that does these sorts of things, you occasionally get rubbed into them. And I was the model, and I had a full. All he left was the eyebrows. I had a full shave, like just like what they called like a close razor. What's it?
Straight razor.
Straight razor. Thank you.
Right.
Just like a straight razor shave. All my facial hair, my head. I let my hair grow out as much as it possibly could muster over a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
And he did like the full. It was delightful, and then he like wrapped me in like the hot towel, and it was weird because I'd never been that naked, but the feeling of it was incredible. And it was also really weird because I was like on a demo floor in front of loads of people who were just watching me get shaved.
Yeah.
And then would go up and didn't ask me if they could touch my head, but would ask the barber, and I would just I'm just laying there as people come up and be like, "Can I touch the dude?" And people are like, "Yeah, sure." The barber's like, "Yeah, no worries," and just like he was cool. He was really cool. He was telling me like horrifying stories of like crazy nights out he'd had in Amsterdam while as he had a razor against my throat. It was an experience. Yeah. I don't know what we're talking about anymore. I'm really sorry. I've got no idea where we are in the show.
I have no clue either, but I'm here for it. I'm enjoying this very much, and now I'm gonna try to scour the interwebs and see if I can find video of you getting your head.
I mean, I guess I think it exists. I don't know. I guess it does. I can't remember what my role, if my role was on the internet or if it was just in person. I don't know if I was the face of the brand, as it were.
Elle's been known. She's like scooper and a half. She was what would you call it, Elle? A detective in nature and in blood? I mean, let's be honest.
It's so funny. My brothers call me Oracle because if it's on the internet, I'm gonna find it.
So, Elle, I'm officially assigning that to you, ma'am. Please, if you could.
It sounds like a dream job for you. People just touching your head, just sitting there.
I love getting the scalp massage. There's nothing.
Oh, not a massage, just a little slap to see how. a little tap to see.
Have you ever thought about? I had a friend's wedding this past weekend, and for a while I was really tempted to get like a really ostentatious hairpiece.
Okay.
But just for the wedding.
Yeah, I see them on TikTok. They
Have
do
you
that.
ever thought about just for like a fancy event, just getting like a ridiculous hairdo that no one would ever actually have, like like a Goku hairpiece or something, like but like a like a tastefully done,
right,
like Goku hair, like frosted tips, and just I just sometimes think it'll be I might just turn up to like a friend's birthday with like a 90s kind of NSYNC wig.
What makes it great is like people will be like, I'm not sure if I should comment on it because it might be a self-conscious thing. So it's like I would be rude to comment, but then it's like if I say nice hair, it's like, oh no, but what does that mean? Like, does that mean I don't like you with no hair? So it's like it would be really funny. I absolutely think that that's something you should do. Come on the show next week with a Jerry curl.
Oh man,
have just one curl in the front.
But also if I feel like you're saying maybe people might be, you don't want to comment, but I'd be hurt if nobody. I mean, like you went out loud and
If I had like the Justin Timberlake 90s, like like the frosted tip curl thing going on, like if I turned up and people were just like, he looks okay, I'd be very upset.
For sure, 100%.
Didn't even notice.
Yeah,
that'd be the worst.
But I'm like such like a worry. I'm like worry so much about everything that I'd be like, I'm gonna be that's probably offensive. Let me just be like, oh, you look good. Like you always do. Not to say you look better now than you did, but
that's hilarious.
We've taken this really off track. I don't know if you want I don't know if there's more lettering things or not.
It's okay. This is honestly, this is par for the course here, Hassan. We get a little man. No, I did have a question. So you work on indie stuff, big two stuff. Do you find that there's a difference between working on creator-owned books versus an established IP, perhaps more freedoms or
I try and I think there probably is. Like I try and look at them in a similar way, I think, or there's stuff that I probably wouldn't do, like like the kind of like the line tails on Chicken Devil. Probably not going to put that in as like the main look on like Poison Ivy or whatever, because you just know it won't get. It's not like the look for those kind of books. Outside of a couple of like little rules like that, like little things I just kind of know won't work. I try and approach them the same way because I think I think that's like why people would hire me in the first place is if they've seen something like Chicken Devil or Above Snakes or whatever. Like I don't think they're hiring me just to do, or at least this is what I would say to myself in my head. I don't think they're hiring me just to do like the kind of most straightforward, like you talked about, just like oblong, just like a straight oblong balloon and just a normal tail and a straight up look. Not that like my only thing, I guess, is doing a weird balloon, but like being a bit more reactive, I think is hopefully is what I think of my kind of approach. And kind of again, like we were talking about being additive, like so I think to not think like that, even on stuff like Poison Ivy or whatever, would be a detriment to being hired. Like I just think like, well, why would they want me on that book otherwise? So like you've got like you have the Poison Ivy page up there of like the thing when she's like blowing the seeds and the
so cool
and just doing like the purple thing and like the kind of the balloons that like drip away like in the top left one. Like for me that's the reason I think anyway, that's the reason I'm being brought on is to do the kind of stuff that I do on other books. And at the end of the day, like, if something doesn't work, it doesn't work, and people will tell me it doesn't work and we can change it. Like there's loads of stuff I've done on Poison Ivy where everyone looks at it and they're like, nah, not this, Hass. Like let's not do that. And I'm like, okay, cool, no worries. Like I'm very unprecious about it.
Okay.
But like I think, as I say, like I think it would be a detriment for me to be like, okay, this is my DC thing where I just do what I think a DC book should look like.
Right.
Because again, I think that's just letting everyone down. Like I think that's just like that's not what I'm there to do. And so if there's a book where they want that, I don't think I'm probably the person they're going to ask to letter it. So like that, I understand that. I think on editorial side they understand that. Like I think that's how I am kind of seen. So Yeah, I try not to. I think it's like what we're doing is like, and you'll see with Marcio's work on Poison Ivy, right? I don't think Marcio's going like, I'm going to draw this differently just because it's Poison Ivy. We all, if we're thinking of ourselves as kind of creative contributors, can't say those two words back to back, then we have a role to fulfill, and that is and that was what we should be doing, rather than being like getting too kind of like, should this look a certain way, and therefore I'm only going to do that. But I'm sure that like holds me back, and I'm fully aware that like I'm sure that there's books where people are thinking like, that's not what we want on this book, and I'm more than aware that probably happens routinely. But I guess that makes sense for me too. Like if that's people look at my work and think like this is not really fitting for that thing, then I guess if I had gone on it, it wouldn't be a good fit anyway, and I wouldn't have a good time doing it. So it sort of makes sense. I think you know kind of like what certain people like, you wouldn't necessarily put I don't know, Tyler Boss on I don't know, you would though, because I think he could do anything. But Tyler Boss probably wouldn't be the person that you'd be looking at to do like an X-Men book where you want like an imminent kind of style. So people know kind of like what the vibe of but then again, I would 100% read a Tyler Boss X-Men comic. I think it'd be awesome. But you know what I mean? Like we kind of know where we're going. Like Jenna Char, like as a horror book, right? That's kind of, so we have these kind of approaches and styles that kind of make sense. And not that you can't kind of go against those, but I think, yeah. Again, I've gone wildly off of what we were talking about, but to answer that original question, no, mostly not really. But I think that there's stuff like in Above Snakes, right? There's stuff in Above Snakes where like I probably wouldn't do some of that stuff in Poison Ivy or in Rogues, or even but even contextually, like within the case of say the Black Label book Rogues and Poison Ivy, like there's stuff I did a lot of like logo-y things in Rogues, like a lot of like when like someone said Captain Cold, and I do like a special Captain Cold logo. I don't. Yeah. Poison Ivy is not the right book for that, so I don't do stuff like that in Poison Ivy.
Okay.
Similarly, there's like tons of like drippy, kind of like scratchy things that are in Poison Ivy that I didn't do in Rogues or in World of Krypton. So you kind of have like established little rules per each individual book as well. But yeah, I think you've got to approach each one. As I say, like I want to approach each one as though like I am contributing something valuable to the work, and that there's a reason why it's been. If this is actually what happens or not, but there's a reason why I've been picked rather than just kind of like a name pulled out of a pool of letterers. Like there's a reason why it was me, and so yeah, that's kind of like how I try and approach everything, regardless of who it's being published by.
One of the things I love about your work is that for the most part you can always tell, oh, this is like if I didn't know. I could just from the I didn't see the credits right. Oh, this is Hassan's work, but it's really you bring a unique and a different flavor to each book that you work on, right? And like you were saying, you wouldn't necessarily do something like what you do in Above Snakes versus something I don't know, like Crashing. Here we go, which is one of two of my favorite books that I've read this year. Happen to be books that you've worked on. Crashing, the other one being The Brother of All Men. This one here I think is probably my personal favorite stuff from anyone really, in terms of just the comic book as a whole, but specifically the lettering. This is the first page from the first issue, and just there's a lot to take in with this, so much, and I love it. Is like, for me, how I took it is, you got this book, you got this chaotic opening, scene in a hospital, lots of craziness, and you've got what you're doing, all different kinds of stuff. You've got at the very top there, like the speaker, the announcement, you got in that red font, and then I love like the doctor's notepad there,
the little ring behind the thing. Yeah,
I dig it, stuff like that. And something from, even you got lowercase there for the person in the wheelchair versus a lot of the other people uppercase. So just I really come to appreciate all like the little different things that you do, almost to the point, I don't know how to put it, like you've ruined other books for me, because and now I see like a basic, box, and it's just like lettering can be so much more.
Yeah, I think you like. I think there'll be people that will look at this, I'm sure, and they'll be like, he shouldn't be doing all this stuff. And so that's a wholly valid response to it. But I think, like, as I was saying, like, I want, and like you were saying, like, everything kind of should feel different, because I think, like, what I think about is like the stuff that was lettered by the person that was drawing the book. Like, I think of like old European comics and stuff like that, where the artist was kind of doing everything. And so it makes sense that each thing should feel different and look different. But it's interesting, because it's almost at odds with American comics, where if you look at a bunch of old hand lettering in American superhero comics, letters have very distinctive styles a lot of the time. And then people and even when the transition happened to digital lettering, a lot of those old hand letterers kind of kept that style as they moved digitally. So like Todd Klein, for example, if you look at Todd Klein's digital lettering, very, very similar to his hand lettering, especially now. Like, he's got all these fonts that are very specific to him. Like Clem Robbins, his digital hand lettering is incredible, and it's such an immaculate representation of his hand lettering. And so I suppose maybe it's a little bit at odds with that kind of idea, but I kind of come to it from that vibe of like the Toth or whatever, who kind of lettered their own stuff. And so it makes sense that each thing should feel unique to it. So like when I was doing this, you got Morgan's art. Like, what I was looking at was like, I'm looking at her line. So like, what are the qualities of like her line that makes it unique to her work? And so that's kind of why the balloons have this kind of like slight wobble to them. Because that was just something I was kept seeing in pages and pages of her rings. It's a lot easier to see in the inks too, I think, when you look at these things. Like, it's a lot easier to see the qualities of the art stronger when you're just looking at it in black and white. And so you're looking at these, you're trying to find these elements, these kind of distinctive elements. Like on Poison Ivy, it's the kind of thick thin of the brush or pen that Marcio uses when inking, which I try replicating the balloons. But yeah, very specifically with this was that kind of wiggle. And so like even like the tails have a kind of like nervousness to them.
Yes.
And so you try to channel this stuff so that like on one hand, you're not taking away from what's being done. Like, if I made that too clean, I think it would take away from what the art is actually doing, and it would be detrimental, even though it might not necessarily seem like it. But at the same time, you're trying to take it to the next bit. Like, the Trina, the colorist, comes in and she takes the artwork and she adds to it and takes it somewhere else. And so for me, it's like I take the art, I want to take that, add the letters, and kind of take it to that next bit, rather than just be like, well, this is where we've got to, let's stop there. So that's what I'm trying to do. And you're trying to figure these little kind of intangible qualities of the artwork and figure out what works.
That's what it is.
It's a really fun one. Yeah.
It's those intangible things. Like there's an energy coming off of, this book, like this, frenetic energy in the art, in the storytelling. And then you add that similar element with the lettering, and like you said, with the way it almost seems like there's a movement, to it, the quality, and it matches, it complements so well the rest of the book, and I mean, I feel like this is like a master class in lettering. And
that's very kind.
What would you maybe an advice or an important skill to up and coming letters? What would you tell these guys who want to get into the game as well?
I think a real boring one is like you kind of like, and I'm sure that I don't do this either, but like a real boring one is like, I think you can't. There's kind of stuff that you'll always need to do, right? There's kind of like basic rules, so to speak, that editors are always going to be looking for. So you want to be able to figure out how to like make sure a page flows properly, and like the placement of captions and balloons to make sure that things can be read in the right order, and it makes a pleasing, it kind of works through the page pleasingly. So if you can get the fundamentals down, then I think you can start being a bit more playful with some of the things. But for me, it's like I would say, like, don't necessarily just look at modern mainstream comics for inspiration. Like, look what you know, Tom Oars was doing hand lettering Spawn, and look at European comics, look at what manga artists do. Just don't necessarily be like, because I think we can sometimes just kind of be quite prescriptive of what we think things should look like. And I think that's the same for, it's really the same for like any art form. You know, you see enough of one type of blockbuster and you think, well, that's what movies should only ever look like. And so I think that's what I would say is like like, you know, there's a bunch of better advice for actually like, how do I letter a comic book? There's tons of that online. You know, you can buy Nate Picos's really good essential guide to lettering book, and that'll teach you everything you need to know about how to actually letter a comic book. But I think the thing is kind of like trying to be inspired by stuff, like look beyond what you think are the traditional examples of the form, and see what you can and can't do. There's a great, like, you know, there's a bunch of rules that you can and can't be broken. There's a great rule of like not mixing tails. So if you have two balloons and you have two tails, don't cross the tails over. That's kind of like a basic standard lettering rule. However, if you're doing a panel where people are speaking over each other and everything's getting jumbled, why not mix them up? Why not purposefully make things? So there's kind of like, there's always going to be a rule.
The overlapping bubbles.
Yeah, and like this sort of thing. So like, there's always going to be a rule, but like at the same time, just kind of understand why those rules exist and understand when you can and can't break them. And I think that's the fun thing about like any creative approach is like, just because someone has said this is what a thing should look like, it doesn't mean that that's what it's got to look like. Like that's the death of creativity, I think, when someone says it should only be this thing. And I know that I'm doing that now by saying it should, you know, look elsewhere or whatever. But like, I think be wider, I suppose, in the approach to things, and also just choose to be risky. Like choose to try things out even if they're not going to work, because at the end of the day, like, we work digitally, so if it doesn't work and someone tells you it doesn't work, you can just change it. And I'd always argue that like it's worth trying something and seeing if it works, rather than just deciding never to try anything out of fear it would fail. Just try things. Like if it, as I say, yeah, I tried loads of stuff in Poison Ivy that gets turned back, and like to me that's like a real big high level book. But just try things out, and if people think, look, this sucks, like, we'll change it, I'll just change it. It's fine.
I've lost. I mean, Al, how many times have we commented that, you know, Hassan book, you're pushing the boundaries, you're really experimenting. You can see that the fun, you're trying out different things, and I think as a reader, it makes it so much fun to just dig into these books. It really does, man. Like,
how you feel about Crashing? I feel like for Chicken Devil, I couldn't imagine somebody else lettering it. I feel like the lettering is like so integral to the storytelling itself and the energy, because this is one of the most stressful things I've ever read in my whole life. And throughout the whole book, I'm just like, and then this is from issue 2 when the full bubble of Please Don't Throw It, because I'm like relatable also every day. But like just the energy the lettering brings to this book is crazy. Like, it's so good.
I had so much fun on it, and I was a huge Hayden fan before I got to work with him on this, and that's like for me it was like what you just said about the energy, and what you're saying about the energy on Crashing as well is exactly that, right? It's like what you don't want to do is just put some balloons on there and then tone and pull everything back. Yeah. And so that was a big thing that I did with the first issue was I love line tails for expressiveness, because in one squiggle, like, you can do this without it being lettering. You can take a pen and a blank piece of paper and you can do a squiggle, and it has like an emotion, like it has a meaning by itself. You draw a straight line and you draw like a frenetic squiggle underneath it, and those two things read differently to you without anything else, which is super exciting to me. So whenever like line tails for certain things will always, for me, be like the best example of like a best tail choice. But yeah, so for this one big thing that Hayden did in Chicken Devil was all these overlapping things. Like, there was so many like overlapping panels, and like things would like cascade, and there was so much energy on the page that like it just felt like the lettering had to do that same thing. And so like on the example you've got here on the right side with like the car and stuff, you can see that happen, like where panels will over, like the balloons will like overlap and then turn into another panel before you, like, hopefully, what I was hoping was like before you'd even realized you'd moved to another image, you were in another part of the book. There was kind of, like, I wanted to try and create like these kind of seamless joins between the imagery, where like on the 1, 2, 3, 4, the fourth panel, like on the top of the right side, like that shout leads you straight through into the next panel, and then the next balloons there lead you straight down to the next panel. And so it's like this whole thing doesn't have like stops like a lot of what most comics do. There isn't like a point where the wall stops the image and stops the moment. It's like we wanted to do a thing where it just didn't stop. It just kept cascading because I think that really adds to like the stress of it, because you're constantly like reading and then recontextualizing and then reading, and then you're like, well, I've gone past the thing I was just looking at. And that's a fun thing you can do as a letter as well.
Driving in a car with kids. Like, truly, I was like, I'm triggered right now because, and also the arrows with the names. Like, it kind of, to me, when I read it, at least, it kind of off top, you're getting their personalities just off of an arrow, which is, you know, chef's.
It's the same thing as like the line, right? You can. It's fun to me, like what you can imbue. What you can add story to, and the fact that you can add some story to a line.
The underline,
yeah. So a really fun thing with this book was that. So, and a lot of the time, this is like maybe a well-known secret, but a lot of the time when you work on these things, depending on the kind of book and the publisher and stuff, but a lot of the time, it might be written, or a bunch of issues might be written before an artist is on board, and issues might be fully drawn before a letterer is attached. So I think the case was the case with this book, where I think the first issue was drawn before I was brought on, and so a bunch of the series was already written. Maybe all of it was already written potentially by Brian. But once I'd kind of worked in the first issue, I got like a message from Brian about like he was starting to think about what he could do with the lettering now, and I think that's always really, really good fun when you're able to add so much to a book that like the other people working on it are trying to figure out like how can they incorporate that even more into the work. Because so much of what you do on lettering, it's so strange, such a strange thing, because so much of what you're doing is responding to stuff that's already been made a lot of the time without consideration for what you're going to do beyond just space, like space has been left. So I remember like in one of the issues I did like a burger logo in one of the balloons for like a burger bar or something that like some mobsters were going to order some burgers from. And so like that was one thing where like Brian was like, okay, so for volume 2 I'm going to try and figure out how to put more logos in there. I'm going to try and figure out how to put more like visual gags and things that you can do in the lettering. And so that's always really fun to be like to work in a way where someone else is like, okay, so how can we actually make this more integrated into the work, like from the script stage. And I think it's one of those things where I was just talking to someone about this old Eddie Campbell book called Alec, which was these kind of like sort of semi-biographical indie comics that Eddie Campbell did, I think in the late 80s, early 90s maybe. And there's a really cool balloon in it, a caption balloon, where it's like it describes an action where it says there's a fight happening or something like, or a brawl erupts, and it's a caption and it has like a hand that points off panel that's built into the caption. And you can see that and you're like, that has been devised from the ground up. Like Eddie Campbell knew when he scripted that bit that he was going to have this caption and a finger that pointed off panel. And so the page doesn't work without it. And so it's easy. You can go in and throw that in afterwards, but you kind of need to be conscious sometimes of like lettering tricks that you can do in the scripting stage to incorporate it. And it's always fun when people start to kind of like think about it at that stage, at the lettering stage. And I've seen that happen a bunch on the things that I've worked on, which is really, really, really good fun. Again, I don't know what the question was that you asked me, but we got a bit carried away.
We got a comment here from Raw Comics. Agent of World and Bloodshot lettering are dope.
Thank you very much. They're both written by Dennis Camp as well, who's very, very good. Agent of World is a fun story for me. It might not be to listen to, but Agent of World is what was like the very first thing I ever lettered in 2016 maybe. I was talking to the writer Dennis, and I was talking about lettering and stuff, and he sent me some pages just to try lettering over, and so I did a really awful version of that first issue. The first ever thing I'd ever lettered, terrible, absolutely terrible. And then that book only just came out this year, right? So like a year later,
Yeah,
Dennis was
I was
like,
about to ask. Like, this is a recent book, but
yeah, very, very long. But if you've seen it, it's like
wow.
every panel takes the artist, I'm sure, like a decade. It's like drenched in detail. And so I re-lettered it again when I got a little bit better at lettering, I think.
Yeah.
And then re-lettered it again. And then, like a couple of years passed, and Dennis was like, look, it's going to come out next year. So I opened back the files and had another look at it. And I was like, this is awful. My work, not the book.
Yeah.
And so I lettered it again. I think I've lettered that first issue, that book, like 4 times.
Wow.
And it's like a really good mile. Each version of it is like a fun milestone of like how it was really awful, slightly less awful, and then but it's a fun, like that weirdly, that book, that one issue of that book, even not even the whole series, that one issue of that book is kind of chartered by the sort of like years of lettering comics. But I'm glad that people are reading it because I'm really proud of it. I think it's a really cool book.
Something like that, like, because the pages are so dense, the art is so detailed. Do you find it makes it maybe a little bit more tricky or difficult to letter, like with an art like that? Because there's no empty space, man.
Yeah.
You know,
do you know what I think? The real unsung hero of that book is Jason Wordie, who colors it and also does a design for it as well, like really, really cool design on that book. But Jason has got this masterful approach to knowing how to color those 𝐬𝐤's art in a way that like draws you to what you need to see without neutralizing all the other detail that's being put in that book. Like, I don't think he never wipes away all the little intricate things that are in that book, but he's got a clever way of managing the kind of depth of the colors to get you to look at the important parts, like the actual story beats, without ever stopping you from being like, I just need to explore like every little background detail in this panel. Like Jason Wordie's work on that and he's on so many like cool books at the moment. But he's a real master at that. It's difficult lettering it in that the sense of like, I have like a really thin balloon stroke on that purposefully to not like thick bold over all the art and stuff. So there's that, and it's very weird tails. Everything's kind of like awkwardly hand drawn to kind of match. Again, it's kind of like a sort of a shakiness or kind of like a slight roughness to everything that matches the world as well. But yeah, it's upsetting just because I don't want to cover stuff up. Like, and that's Dennis's fault, not mine. But it's like, that's the worst part about working on that book is like, I'm like, 𝐬𝐤 has drawn all these little things and I just have to put this like box over them. And I'm like, no one apart from me and Jason are ever going to see that, you know? And that's upsetting. That's like genuinely quite upsetting when I have to work on that book. But no, it's the easy, like amazing artwork and a great script makes it very, very easy to work on, to letter it.
Yeah, it's a great book. Agreed. Another one of my favorites here, Hassan, Brother of All Men, that you've worked on. You know, you just mentioned, you know, matching the book, and then, you know, from the first page you see, I love this style. You know, it's like a period piece set. What was the date there? 1920s or whatever. Something like this. How do you go into, you know, deciding how you're going to approach this book, or how much is it, you know, how much input do you get from perhaps, you know, Zach, you know, the writer or the artist on this one?
Well, this was cool because it was like, you know, from the script stage, these kind of like narration was very explicitly called out as being, you know, like third person, like sort of omniscient, prosaic narration, which you don't normally get. We don't often get that in comics. Like a lot of the narration we see in comics is from someone, it's from a character. This isn't. This is like a book that we're reading almost. And so I wanted to kind of mimic that in like the chapter titles. I think the chapter titles were like, that was always the look for the chapter titles. I think what I actually originally proposed. So talking about stuff that doesn't work. So what I originally proposed for this was to make the those like narration caption pages like overlap. So like the first one on panel 2 there, actually my original draft of that came from off panel and sat across the top of it. And like it would overlap over the edges and stuff like that to try and reduce the panels, which was not people were not a fan of, which is again fine. So it's like you see these kind of iterative processes, but what everyone did really like was the idea of making it feel like it had been taken from a book. So there's this kind of like paper texture that's on everything.
Yes.
The font is a very like novelistic font. And also just kind of trying to like integrate it in interesting ways, like in the final panel, how it sits behind some of the elements, so that it's almost like, is what we're seeing the visual, like the narration come to life. It's woven in a little bit more so that it doesn't just feel like it's slapped on top. Yeah, so a lot of this comes from the script. Like Zach was very specific about the fact that like, I don't know that it was called out as being, it looks like it's been taken from a book, but it was called out as being like a very specific style of narration. And we'd done, I'd worked on a book with Zach and Lonnie called Undone by Blood a few years ago, where there was a similar kind of thing where like a character was reading a novel in that book. And so I kind of took elements that I knew worked from that and integrated it. So I think it's like similarly had like a paper texture on it and stuff like that. But I didn't want to put a stroke on it, so I didn't want it to feel too comic-y, because sometimes like a black line around something can feel like a bit too drawn. So I wanted to feel like it was a real ripped out bit of a book, as much as you can, you know. So that was kind of the approach on this one.
Nailed it, man. Love it. And myself, I'm a sucker for what do you call this, where like the lettering is built into like the
I don't know, just the sound effects. I don't know.
Yeah, you
I
know,
don't know that it's a special.
yeah.
I just try and integrate. Like, you know, again, it's the same thing. It's like I'm not the biggest fan. I sometimes use them. I'm not the biggest fan of like font-based sound effects. Just because I think sometimes you can kind of, it just feels a bit too digital. So I tend to draw a lot of them. Not all of them, you know. I'm sure I'll say this and then you'll find a million examples of like font-based sound effects, but as much as I can, try and draw them, just because I think it's a bit more like of my hand is in the work. So I try and integrate them a little bit more, and I just like drawing them. It's just a really fun part of lettering comics, is drawing the sound effects.
I love reading them. I'm a reader where I make all the sounds. So you know, I get a clink and you know the brrr. So you gotta have fun with this, man. You know?
I think it's like, I don't know, you know, it's a weird these are the sort of things that maybe you only think about much when you're staring at like hundreds of these pages a month. But like, it's a weird thing where like, what is a sound effect supposed to be? Because it's not really noise, but it kind of is noise. But it's like the visual. It also needs to be. You can't just write the word like clink in Arial and just put it next to that, because do you know what I mean? It won't actually work. So it is visual. So it's not so much that you're creating a sound as you are creating the visual representation of what that may sound like. So like the clink is kind of meant to be a bit like watery, like the drop that's coming off next to it. You know, that was kind of like what I was trying to mimic with like the weird K. Yeah. And the ver, you know, again, is the same. There's like a directional approach to it. The ver, I don't want to be bad on my own work, but I don't know. Looking back on that now, I think that maybe I could have done a slightly better job. But that it's kind of a weird thing, right? Sound effects. It's like it's a sound, but it's never going to be a sound. So almost the words itself are almost not important so much as the presentation of the words is more important. This is what I think anyway. So the presentation of the words is more important than the actual words, because you have to read it as an image rather than as a word. Otherwise, you just put a balloon that just said "Vrr" and point it towards the end of the boat. So there's a reason why we're not doing that. So I think like that's like what I'm always trying to kind of get at with the sound effects, is like I'm trying to make the noise as a drawing.
Okay. Hey, Elle,
That makes sense.
Elle, you've got a favorite sound effect, or you know?
Not off the top of my head.
No, you don't like.
I like Snicked from the Wolverine thing, but I've never got to do one yet.
Oh, are you talking about the little thwip action?
I like a Spider-Man thwip, yeah.
I was gonna ask, did you do you when you pick or choose a project, do you kind of, since you're not like the initial creative, creator or whatever, do you pick books that you like, or do you just kind of, like, do you vet the book,
yes
or do you just, yeah?
I think there's stuff that I know that I'm not necessarily like the right choice for. So if I don't think I'm like the right choice for something, then I won't take it on. I kind of just really like lettering. So as long as I can fit it into a schedule and I think I'll be a good choice for it, I'll say yes. And also sometimes if it's like, it poses like an interesting challenge. Like I think we talked about the razor blades thing. Like the razor blade thing was a really interesting challenge. Like that, I would have, even if I had no time to do that book, I would have said yes and figured out how to add more days to the week, because like it's just one of those things where you want the challenge of being able to do that. But yeah, there's always going to be stuff that's just I'm not the right fit for. So like, if I'm not the right fit, I don't think. But again, a lot of the time I don't get asked if I'm not the right fit. I think people realize that before they ask me. But yeah, if I see a project and I know I'm not quite right, like, then I know I won't go with that. But I think people kind of know what I think people have the kind of the vibe of the things that I'm interested in. And for me, it's not like a genre or anything really. It's just like the feel of the project, and knowing if it's something that I'm going to be able to kind of do something with. Yeah, like that. So there's kind of artists that I'll always say yes to, because I know that like I can have loads of fun with their style and stuff. But I mean, on the other side, to answer this in a really boring way, is that it's also just a job. So I have to say yes to a certain amount of projects to live. But that's a less interesting answer. But yeah, it's not that I vet projects so much. I think I would assume that I'm kind of vetted before they arrive to me. So I think most of the time I say yes to stuff because I think it probably has been vetted before it's reached me. And I think there's a reason why they're asking for me to do it. So
we want more.
I take that with good faith. Yeah.
Every book. You know what's so funny? Hey, we've said it so many times on the show. One of our other favorite letters happens to be Aditya. And I just doing some research last night. You actually had a podcast.
It's coming back at some point.
It's coming back. Okay. Letters and Lines. Yeah.
Yeah. He. I mean, I learned everything about lettering from his work. Okay. He's great, and he's really smart about comics too. And yeah, we had this podcast where we did a couple of sort of what we called seasons, like 10 episodes or something like that, where we, for like 2 hours, would just talk about lettering comics. So if that's at all interesting to people, you should check it out, called Letters and Lines. But yeah, it's not a lot of people talk about it. And this is why you asked me one question and I spend 15 minutes answering it. Is that there isn't a lot of opportunities. People don't give you a lot of opportunities to talk about like kind of like the craft of lettering, like the actual, not to sound too airy about it, but like the artistry of the work that you're doing. It's not, you don't often get a chance to talk about it. So it is always fun. So we kind of just made our own chance.
Credited. A lot of the times we get like press and, mailers and stuff, and it'll just be, oh, so nobody lettered this, must be then? And it's like a shame because, you want to credit the whole team, especially on like social media and stuff. And it's like honestly, like I just won't post something if I can't find the whole team. And I think we did like what book was it? We had a copper drop on the show a couple weeks ago, and I was like, I couldn't find the letter, and it ended up being you. And I was like, what a shame, because I'm just like, that's so crazy because to me, I feel like your name on a book sells it and like not to, inflate your ego or nothing, but I genuinely do feel like, your name on a book, I'm going to pick it up because I'm familiar with your style of lettering and I enjoy it. And so to have like you be like one of like the top guys right now, and you're not getting credited on something like that, to some people that might have been, oh, I'm definitely checking this out.
I think like, I sort of I'm realistic about like what my role is in the comic, and that like for most people, the majority of people, I think probably the majority of people don't even know what it is as a job, as a role. So I don't get to. Again, sounds a bit businessy, but like, I mean, as long as I'm paid and people enjoyed the work, then I can do more of it, then I'm happy. Like, I don't need to have the credit. I mean, the credit will be in the book, like in the actual printed edition that people read. So, like, I don't get too fussed when people kind of don't credit me in like the previews and things like that. Maybe I should be more bothered by it. I probably should be more bothered by it, but it doesn't really, like, you know. People still have to read my work to read the book, and me as a name is less important than the quality of the thing that we're producing at the end of the day. So yeah, I don't know. I don't really get too fussed about like when it's not on previews, because like, well, I mean, listen, you said earlier that if you see my stuff, you tend to recognize it. So I'll take that as a compliment too.
I was about to say, Al, you know, you're talking about this book, and so you checked out the book and you didn't know who the letterer was off.
Oh, there was no preview pages for the entire.
Come on now.
It was just covers and titles and all. But I'll say this too, because there has been, you know, discourse on, you know, social media where creators are like saying like, hey, like, you guys can definitely credit us on stuff, like it's cool, and it's like, for, you know, for us as like, I don't know, like a, you know, like a media outlet or something, you know, to not be able to, you know, reciprocate that energy. And it's like, hey, like, we need to talk to the publishers, and then, because we don't know, we only know the information we're given.
Yeah, for sure.
And so, but for sure, I feel like, and even sometimes the colorists and stuff, I'm just like, the book is like, I don't know, I feel like it's such a team effort that it's a shame that
I mean, listen, I'm happy for my name to be as big as possible on the covers.
Yeah, for sure.
And not
your
even
whole name.
Yeah, not even anyone else's either. I'm not that fussed about anyone else's name. Yeah. No, I think, you know, like this is from like a kind of like a business side of it. Like, the people that are going to be hiring me most of the time will know me without those preview things. It's not. It's like, that doesn't really. I don't think that really has much of an impact. Maybe I don't know, but it doesn't feel like it has much of an impact on kind of getting work. But like, do I think we should all be on the covers? Yeah, I mean, that would be great. And most of the time we are, right? Like, I get a lot of cover credit. I'm very lucky in that I get a lot of cover credit. So there's only a couple of publishers that don't do it as a rule, and so it's hard for me to be annoyed. Like, if every other letterer had their name on a book at one publisher, but then just I didn't, like, that would be something else. But like, you know, I kind of get I get the role. Like, I've been credited in books in like the copyright section. You know, certain book publishers will just put the letterer and the colorist in like the copyright notice. It doesn't make any, like, to me, it's like, you know, it doesn't make any difference. I like, for me, the work stands as the work. It doesn't need to have my name kind of like plastered really big on it. But would I prefer it? For sure, yeah, obviously. But yeah,
I hope
it doesn't.
You're taking notes, Elle, because, you know, she likes to have her credit on every social media post or you see, Elle, it's not about the ego. It's like the work is good. That's all.
For me, it's a grammar thing. You know, my other degree is in writing, and so for me, it's like, why didn't you use a comma here? And so it's not necessarily a credit thing. It's more of a control issue.
Listen, would I take it? For sure. Would I advocate for letterers to be on covers? Yeah, I think so. But I'm also realistic about, like, we're talking very specifically about lettering here, but I'm very sure that like most people aren't seeing the Otsmane-Elhaou on the cover and being like, gotta buy that book now. Like, that's not, I don't think that's, you know, being realistic, that's not what's happening. So I understand the reason as to why they want to limit the amount of names. It just makes it easier to sell these things. And more people buying the books means more opportunities for things to work on. So that's how I kind of look at it. But yeah, I mean, you know, 100% I'd love to have my name on. I don't even want art on them. I just want my name.
Hey, we want more covers, man. Any plans before we get out of here? Any more covers in the works? Anything you can on?
Would love to. There is something for another book, but it's not I mean, it hasn't. It's nowhere beyond a blank page at the moment.
Okay.
So, but I'd love to know. I think is I think I might just do more of them as fun exercises.
Yeah.
Because it's really good fun. So there is more. There will be more coming. Yeah.
I'm gonna add to the collection. And any cover you drop is a must, an automatic cop. And just again, before we get out of here, on a scale of 1 to 10, how much does it upset you to see a typo in an email or a tweet or anything like that?
Listen, I've 100% sent. I've 100% worked on books that have got typos in them. It's like so this is a common thing, I think, where it's like, it's not, if there's a typo, it's not my fault. I'm just going by what's in the script.
Okay.
So if there's a typo,
not throwing them under the bus. You're like, no, that's how they spelled it.
It's not. There's a proofreader, which is not the editor either. Like, it's not the editor's fault either. There's a proofreader at some point.
Yeah.
And so we'll blame the proofreader if it gets by, or maybe the typo's intentional.
Yeah.
And it's a clever thematic point. I don't know.
Okay. Because I was always, I feel like Elle, she's always getting on me about my typos and my tweets, and I feel like it really gets under some people's skin. And I do.
I'm not gonna lie. Sometimes in comics, like even like especially with the big two, for some reason I'm a little bit more lenient, on indies. But the big two, I'm like, I know you guys got the money to pay people to check this, and so sometimes I'll be reading it and I'll come across one and I put it down. I'm like, what in the world? You just took me out the story.
There's a I don't know if this is a story I can tell or not. It's not. It doesn't feel like it's not a story I can't tell. But there's one of the proofreaders at DC is so interesting and so smart, and I get these notes back, especially on Sword of Azrael, which has got like a lot of religious imagery in it, and some of the proofreading notes are like, the proofreader like either knows this thing or has found out in the course of trying to do their job, and will add like a nugget of information about like something that they've like researched to check if we've spelled it right, or like if we've got this kind of religious story correct or whatever. And I've learned so many things in like the margins of the proofreading notes from that book. It's like genuinely very, very interesting. It's like, seems like a fun job. But yeah, there's a proofreader at DC, but that who is like my hero, because there's just so many interesting things that I've learned from them, from just reading that, like when I get the notes back to fix some of the errors or whatever, and I'm like, I've just been taught a lesson in.
I love a good footnote. I'm not gonna lie, I love
great.
A good footnote.
It's really interesting. Yeah. And no one will ever read it, but like we'll know. It's great.
Raw comics thing. Some proofreaders I met are just amazing at what they do.
Fascinating.
So Al, I'm gonna give you all kinds of footnotes then for any of our social media stuff and shows.
Oh,
stuff.
not constructive, constructive footnotes. Just I think like that book House of Leaves, like there's like whole chapters that are just footnotes, and to me, I love that kind of stuff. Like I love weeding through like that kind of information on that grand of a scale, and so I love like the editing process. And again, like I said earlier, that's why I love panel by panel for that.
That's it, folks. Let me. Where's that banner for panel by panel? You want to throw that up one more time? Yes, check out panel by panel. So it's monthly. Is that correct, Hassan?
Every single month.
Every single month, yes. And
it's the price of a takeaway cup of coffee, and you get about over 100 pages of wonderfully designed, if I say so, magazine, just wall-to-wall essays, interviews, analysis. It's really good stuff.
Some amazing stuff in there, as well as panel strip naked.
The weirdest name. My partner was like, at the time when I did it in like 2016, my partner was like, there's like a card game called Strip Chat Naked. She was like, you could just call it like Strip Pile Naked, and I was like, memorable. I didn't think anyone would ever watch it at that point, and I sort of stuck with this weird name, but it's memorable. I guess that's the main.
For sure, and it's pretty. I mean, you got like 37,000 subscribers. So I mean, you're doing pretty good with that, man. Like
it's doing all right. Yeah. For the very niche kind of content that it is. But yeah, it's just really if you like kind of understanding how comics work, then that's like a fun. We kind of break stuff down on there.
Yeah, a whole lot of fun. I like the one you did on Headlopper, and I checked out the Human Target one you did.
Yeah,
Really,
it's a great book.
On the framing and all that. Loved it, man. Loved it.
Thank you.
Fantastic stuff. Check out his works, folks. Anything you got coming up that you can tell us about?
Doing a DC book set in the Sandman universe, Dead Boy Detectives. That's coming out in December, which I'm really excited about. Yeah, it's a really good book. It's a really, really good book. All Against All, the new image series with Casper Wingard and Alex Packnadell's coming out in December as well. New Witcher series is also coming out in December. What's the Furthest Place from Here is back with new issues that are out now. Just loads of stuff. Poison Ivy, way more Poison Ivy coming. We got
cool.
The Rogues hardcover's out soon, I think. I don't know, just loads of stuff. Above Snakes trade is coming out in December, I think. The Rogues Gallery trade is out in December. Loads of stuff. Christmas, all in time for Christmas.
Amazing. Just in time for Christmas. Thanks to everybody in the chats for hanging out with us. And if you're catching the replay, thank you for checking out the video. Hassan, thank you so much for joining us.
Genuinely, it's been a lot of fun as it was before. It's great fun.
Oh man!
I'll come back whenever.
That's great to hear. That's great to hear. And we've got the nerdies coming up. I think mid-January ish, and something tells me you'll probably be at the very least nominated again. So we hope to be able to get you on again. You're welcome back in the house anytime, folks. It's been a wrap. That's it. Had a great time with everybody. I'm kind of. How do we end it? We don't normally the guest leaves and then we continue the show.
I can go if you want.
No. You want to wrap it up? Ella?
Bye.
Oh my goodness. Let's hit the outro. Okay. Nope, that's not the one. The intro. You see?
With the you better cut that copyright.
All discombobulated. How do I can't even find the outro.
Raw Comics counted.
There we go. We're out, folks. Thanks for hanging out with us. Thanks for watching. Please remember to like, subscribe, all that good stuff. Check out Hassan on the socials. Yeah, that's it. We're out of here, folks. Have a great Sunday. Enjoy the World Cup. Go Canada. Tomorrow, baby.